History remembers this clash because it cuts to the heart of faith, conscience, and authority. A Reformation-era collision over conscience, authority, scripture, and whether certainty can purify religion without consuming Europe in fire. Behind the names stands a harder question. Must truth break institutions apart, or can reform preserve unity without surrendering conviction? Martin Luther argues for the view that truth that is willing to shatter corrupted institutions. Desiderius Erasmus argues for the view that reform that preserves unity through learned restraint. Both arguments promise strength. Both carry a danger the other side refuses to ignore. This is not merely a dispute about style, policy, or personality. It is a struggle over human nature, moral limits, and the architecture of civilization. If Luther is right, hesitation leaves vital goods undefended. If Erasmus is right, unchecked power hollows out the very goods it claims to save. Tonight, we bring those principles into direct collision. This debate begins now. Welcome to When Great Minds Collide. I am your narrator, and I will remain neutral throughout this exchange. Tonight's question is this: must truth break institutions apart, or can reform preserve unity without surrendering conviction? On one side stands Martin Luther. Luther argues for the view that truth that is willing to shatter corrupted institutions. Luther fears that the alternative can slide into weakness, illusion, or surrender. On the other side stands Desiderius Erasmus. Erasmus argues for the view that reform that preserves unity through learned restraint. Erasmus fears that the alternative can harden into domination, blindness, or cruelty. Each speaker will offer an opening statement, answer in direct exchange, cross-examine the other, and close. The judgment belongs to you. First, Martin Luther.
I defend the view that truth that is willing to shatter corrupted institutions. Human beings do not become wise simply because they are left alone with good intentions. Any serious society must therefore be built on conscience and scripture. My opponent offers the view that reform that preserves unity through learned restraint. But that answer trusts what history repeatedly betrays. Without conscience, noble language becomes vulnerable to the ruthless. Without heresy, institutions drift until opportunists quietly own them. I do not deny cost. I deny the fantasy of costless order. Peace, liberty, truth, or prosperity survive only when they are guarded in structure, not merely praised in speeches. My position asks for discipline from rulers and citizens alike. It prefers hard foundations to flattering illusions. Judge my case by what it can preserve when pressure arrives. That is why I defend the view that truth that is willing to shatter corrupted institutions.
I defend the view that reform that preserves unity through learned restraint. The deepest dangers in history often arrive dressed as necessity. My opponent mistakes conscience for wisdom and organization for justice. A civilization is not saved when it centralizes every answer or glorifies every emergency. It is saved when it remembers the limits of power and the dignity of persons. Without restraint, Scripture becomes domination. Without humility, heresy becomes ideology. I do not deny the need for courage, order, or seriousness. I deny that fear should draft the constitution of the soul. Human beings deserve institutions that answer to conscience, proportion, and moral scale. A society worth saving must remain human while it protects itself. That is why I defend the view that reform that preserves unity through learned restraint.
Your answer trusts reform that preserves unity through learned restraint. But history punishes that trust whenever serious enemies appear.
No. History punishes the arrogance that believes truth that is willing to shatter corrupted institutions can remain limited once enthroned.
Power is dangerous, yes, but weakness invites predators faster than strength invites abuse.
And concentrated power manufactures predators inside the house itself.
You speak as if human beings naturally restrain appetite when institutions are soft or authority is hesitant.
I speak as if appetite must be checked on rulers and reformers alike, not merely on the weak.
Then admit that order requires authority clear enough to command, punish, and act.
Authority, yes, but there is a line between authority and domination, and your side keeps erasing it.
Your moderation often arrives too late, after disorder, corruption, or conquest has already spread.
Your certainty arrives too early, before conscience, plurality, and self-correction have had room to work.
A civilization survives when it can act decisively in defense of what matters.
A civilization deserves to survive when it still knows what must never be done in its own defense.
Take institutions seriously. Conscience and Scripture do not sustain themselves by sentiment alone.
Institutions matter, which is exactly why they must be built to restrain the remedy you prefer.
If heresy is left diffuse, cunning actors capture it without answerability.
If it is centralized too completely, those same actors capture far more and hide behind necessity.
My side disciplines ambition by giving it visible form, hierarchy, and consequence.
My side disciplines power by denying that hierarchy and scale are automatically virtuous.
Practical government is not a sermon. It is an arrangement of incentives, limits, enforcement, and timing.
Exactly. And that arrangement must serve persons, not teach persons to serve the arrangement.
Your model assumes virtue will persist without hard architecture.
Yours assumes architecture stays innocent after it begins rewarding itself.
In the real world, durable order is engineered, administered, and defended.
In the real world, durable order is also judged by what it refuses to sacrifice for efficiency.
Now place your theory under real pressure: rebellion, invasion, collapse, famine, or moral emergency.
Crises reveal principles, they do not excuse their burial.
When time shortens, hesitation can become cruelty to the innocent.
When fear rules, cruelty quickly renames itself responsibility.
Leaders are remembered for preserving the community, not for elegant scruples that died with it.
Communities also remember the habits leaders teach them in the name of preservation.
If survival requires severity, history may still thank the severe.
History often thanks conquerors first and judges them later.
A civilization that cannot defend itself lectures from the grave.
A civilization that saves itself by becoming monstrous may survive only in name.
I would rather burden power than abandon the future.
I would rather save the future from the habits your burden creates.
If your principle rules, who answers when reform that preserves unity through learned restraint meets a ruthless enemy with no conscience at all?
Disciplined limits answer first. Once your cure dominates the field, it rarely returns quietly to its cage.
What do you call justice if it cannot compel obedience when obedience matters most?
I call it justice ordered by law and conscience, not by the permanent enlargement of emergency power.
How do you prevent reform that preserves unity through learned restraint from becoming paralysis the moment conflict becomes costly?
By distinguishing restraint from passivity, and by remembering that not every hard choice is wise merely because it is hard. If your principle rules, what prevents truth that is willing to shatter corrupted institutions from rewarding itself until it forgets the people it claimed to save?
Limits, accountability, and the plain fact that order is answerable to outcomes, not to self-worship.
Why should anyone trust rulers who say necessity justifies exceptions whenever they feel cornered?
Because responsible rule must still be judged by whether it secures the community instead of flattering its anxieties.
And when the danger passes, what returns power from its swollen form back to ordinary measure?
Character, law, and institutions designed to remember that power is a burden, not a permanent feast. My final claim is simple. The goods we cherish become defenseless when the view that truth that is willing to shatter corrupted institutions is ignored. You may dislike the hardness of my answer, but history is harder than sentiment. A serious people must build for pressure, not only for peace. When danger comes, structure, discipline, and resolve decide whether noble ideals survive first contact. If you believe civilizations must endure before they can be humane, my argument stands with the view that truth that is willing to shatter corrupted institutions. Judge me by whether I leave a people capable of standing upright in a dangerous world.
My final claim is equally simple. Politics loses its human measure when the view that reform that preserves unity through learned restraint is silenced. A civilization is not measured only by what it can impose, but by what it refuses to become. Power without moral proportion becomes its own emergency. The future needs strength, yes, but strength governed by conscience, dignity, and restraint. If you believe a society must remain human while it survives, my argument stands with the view that reform that preserves unity through learned restraint. Judge me by whether I leave a people still worthy of their own principles.
My thanks to Martin Luther and Desiderius Erasmus. What we have heard is not a slogan, but a true collision of governing principles. One side defended the view that truth that is willing to shatter corrupted institutions. The other defended the view that reform that preserves unity through learned restraint. Each speaker exposed a danger the other side would rather minimize. That is why debates like this still matter far beyond their own century. Now the floor turns to you. Who won this debate? Tell us in the comments, and tell us why. If you value long-form historical debates like this, like the video. Subscribe for more great minds in collision. We will see you in the next debate.